Shemai. Today we're going to have a look at the dandelion, or Taraxacum officinale, or in Welsh, Donta Llw. It's a plant with quite a bad reputation, often considered to be a weed and quite invasive. But actually, it's a fascinating British plant that probably deserves a bit of a closer look. There's around 250 different species divided into 9 sections, or micro species, which are very, very difficult to distinguish between. One of the most fascinating things about dandelion, it's almost indestructible. We all know the little dandelion clocks, the seeds that can blow for up to 500 metres away and reseed. But also, if you try and dig it out, any little bit of root that snaps off will grow from that, which is makes it very difficult to get rid of. But I don't see the need to get rid of it, as it's such a great plant. The name dandelion may come from the French dent de lion, which means the teeth of the lion, because the flower head looks like the teeth of a lion. But it may be linked to the lion being a symbol of the sun, like the astrological sign of Leo, and the flower being a disc like the sun, which opens and closes with the sun. It also could represent the rays of the sun because of the way they look there. I think we're all able to recognise dandelion, and their flowers can grow from 30 to 50 millimetres across. You can see a nice example there. And the actual plants themselves can grow from about 5 centimetres, really quite low down, up to about 30 centimetres tall. And you can see these are sort of somewhere in between. And interestingly, a single plant, if sort of left alone, can live between 10 and 13 years old, which is quite incredible. The subspecies that we talked about, very difficult to distinguish between, but you can see for yourself just by looking at the leaves and the difference in them. You can see this one is a very rounded leaf with a few jaggedy edges. This one is a very raggedy looking leaf, and much, much bigger. And then this one, again, raggedy, but much, much smaller. And there are people who study this called taraxacologists, who have a much greater knowledge of how to distinguish between the various subspecies. Dandelions are perennials, which means that they continue to grow throughout the year, every year, and will flower. You can actually find dandelions throughout the year and will flower throughout the year, but their main flowering season is between sort of March and October. The flower itself comes up out of the ground on this hollow stem, and all parts of the dandelion have a milky latex type sap, which apparently can be used to treat things like warts and verrucas if you dab it onto it. Dandelion is seen as a very useful medicinal plant because it's what they call a diuretic. A diuretic is something that in the most simple terms makes you want to wee more, and that's why another name for it is wet the bed, because if you take dandelion as a medicine, it can make you want to wee more, and that's where that name comes from. Walking along the road, and here's a really good example of how dandelions open as the day goes on. So at the moment they're closed, and I just keep recording as I come along the curb. That bit was in shadow, and as we come along into the parts that are in the sun, you can see these are just starting to open. As we come further down, not very far, it's almost like the stages of opening. And then as we get here, just along the curb, look at those, fully opened and in the sun. As you would imagine, these bright yellow dandelion flowers attract all manner of insects, and on a warm day like we had yesterday, they were absolutely swarming with bees and pollinators, which is fantastic. And that's why, although considered a weed, it is such a useful plant and should just be left to grow. It's a shame that dandelions are now seen to be a weed. In the olden days, they were actually an important crop that were grown and were transported around the country to be grown as a crop, because they filled what they called the hungry gap. The time of year where all of the stored food from the harvest was just about used up, and before the new harvest and new crops were starting to grow, and it can be eaten as a food. The young leaves can be added to salads. The heads, when they're fresh and bright, can be eaten straight off the plant, picked. But one of the things you must be careful of is dandelions are quite a favourite place for animals to wee on, and you don't really want to be eating that. And also, like I said, people tend to treat them as weeds and will spray them with weed killers to kill them. So you must be very, very cautious if you ever try to eat anything, especially these dandelions. Not only were the leaves used, but also the roots can be roasted and used as a coffee substitute, which is actually caffeine free. It doesn't have that addictive caffeine property. And also the flowers apparently make one of the best country wines. I think probably our favourite thing about dandelions are the dandelion clocks. So the flower heads turn into these fluffy little balls. You can see this one's just starting to open. Now, a dandelion head with the seeds there can hold up to 400 individual seeds. The average is about 180, and as I said before, they can travel up to 500 metres. It's one of those things that reinforces that indestructible nature, with those roots growing from just the tiniest bits, the seeds travelling so far. It really is a fantastic survivor. These seed heads as well are a fantastic barometer for the weather, meaning that they can tell you if rain is coming. Obviously, the dandelion wants to survive, and its best chance is if it can get those seeds into the wind and blown away. In the rain, they will close up, and even if it's going to be a showery day, they will stay closed, and on the nicest days, they'll open up, and those seeds get the best chance to travel the furthest distance to make new plants. So there we go. Don't think of dandelions as a weed. Have a look at all the benefits, from the insects to the foods, and just how beautiful they are on a bright sunny day. Okay, go out and find them. Good luck.